An axe head floats. The company of the prophets said to Elisha, "Look, the place where we meet with you is too small for us. Let us go to the Jordan, where each of us can get a pole, and let us build a place there for us to live." And he said, "Go." Then one of them said, "Won't you please come with your servants?" "I will," Elijah replied, and he went with them. They went to the Jordan and began to cut down trees. As one of them was cutting down a tree, the iron axe head fell into the water. "Oh, my Lord," he cried out, "it was borrowed." The man of God asked, "Where did it fall?" When he showed him the place, Elisha cut a stick and threw it there and made the iron float. "Lift it out," he said. Then the man reached out his hand and took it. So, where we left off is that we are now with the prophet Elisha. So, Elisha was the understudy prophet for Elijah, who was taken up on in the whirlwind. And so he is no longer on the earth as he's been taken up in the whirlwind. And so this whole time, Elisha was learning and studying under Elijah. And so now Elijah is the prophet, and he is going around and he is doing what the Lord commands him to do. And so in this case, he also, just like Elijah, was able to part the Jordan by having full faith in the Lord. And so we also know that we just, leaving off from the previous one, that he was doing other miracles. One of them was he healed somebody of leprosy. And we're currently in the time where in Israel it is a conflicting time because Israel has fallen away. Both Israel, and so now we have two kingdoms. We have the kingdom of Judah and we have the kingdom of Israel. I believe in this time. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And Israel is slowly but surely falling away from the Lord, and they're worshiping other gods, and so it's gotten to the point where there wasn't a huge amount of worshipers of the Lord that were left, and that's where we're currently at. We're currently at where Israel got into the promised land, had everything prepared and done for them, but slowly, generation after generation, because they didn't really, they weren't maybe a part of, they weren't a part of seeing the miracles beforehand, having battles and such. Now they're just having battles because of the lack of faith in the Lord, the lack of worshiping the Lord. And so now we have generation after generation who is starting to not turn to the Lord because they don't see the Lord as their helper at this point, um, because they were not following the commands. They weren't being taught. They weren't being taught. It wasn't being really cast down from generation to generation. And those that were trying to teach them, unfortunately, you have people who choose not to believe and not to understand. And when a lot of people choose not to believe because they don't understand. And I always say, especially when it comes to the Bible is the past, present, and the future. And it is wisdom and it's beyond our knowledge. And we are to pray to the Lord to ask for wisdom, to ask for understanding, because I believe the Bible is also goes beyond our comprehension. We can comprehend it, but it also speaks as the living word. It's the Lord's living word. And so, again, where we're at is a time right now where Israel's going back and forth between somewhat worshiping the Lord and then, but also worshiping all these other gods and not fully committed to the Lord. And so, let's see here, bringing past to present in our walk, in our daily walk, are we sometimes not fully committed? Are is it sometimes where we're not wanting to listen or listening at all or wanting to do what the Lord may want us to do or being impatient or being demanding and wanting to do things in our own time instead of the Lord's? I had a good conversation with somebody, a good friend of mine, about that. Like, we can get it in a point in our lives where we are kind of frustrated for our circumstances and and I always have to have, especially when you're like just venting, we just have to pause and take a step back and understand the reason, where our problems really lie. Are we causing them? Did we help cause them? Are we doing anything about it? Or are we just trying to force something? Are we trying to throw more attention and more stuff at it, possibly making it worse instead of giving it to the Lord, instead of asking the Lord for peace? So there's a lot here. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind when we read over this? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think?